The Scotland we seek is open, welcoming, diverse and inclusive, and no Tory is ever going to be allowed to change that.
Very fortunate, and I consider myself very fortunate every single day to have the privilege of representing in this Scottish Parliament one of the most diverse constituencies in the whole of Scotland, my constituency on the south side of Glasgow. And that means that I see on a daily basis as an MSP and also in my work as First Minister the contribution that is made to Scotland by the Scottish Shia community, by the Muslim community in Scotland more generally, and indeed by each and every one of Scotland's faith groups. Each and every one of those faith groups adds to the diversity of our society and to the essential strength of our communities. Scotland, of course, is right now playing our part in providing a home for refugees. We have welcomed already nearly 40% of the refugees to arrive in the UK so far under the Syrian resettlement programme. But you only need to look at the daily news from right across Europe to see how far we are currently falling short as a continent in developing an effective, collective and humane response to the refugee crisis. And so now, perhaps more than ever, we need strong, positive, resolute voices from all faiths and all nationalities which unite to oppose discrimination and which celebrate understanding, compassion and diversity. So I'm delighted to be here tonight to help to celebrate the work of the society, but much more importantly than that, to celebrate Scotland's wonderful diversity and to promote and to dedicate myself and my government to working with all of you to continue to strengthen our interfaith relationships and the strength and the diversity of this wonderful country that all of us are proud to call home. My party, in a United Kingdom context, is probably the most pro-immigration party of all. We are pro-immigration for two broad reasons. Firstly, I believe as a matter of principle that one of the greatest ways of fostering better understanding between different peoples and different countries, frankly, one of the best ways of promoting peace globally is to allow people to travel, to experience life in different countries and to develop that greater understanding. So I'm a proponent in principle of freedom of movement and people experiencing different countries and different cultures. But there's also a practical reason for Scotland. Scotland is a country, and we're not unique in this sense, but the demographics of Scotland are quite challenging. Our birth rate is not growing at a fast enough rate. Our population is ageing, which is a good thing. People are living longer. But we face a situation in future that if we don't attract people to come and live in Scotland, our working age population may decline. It was in decline about 20 years ago, and migration from other parts of Europe reversed that. So if we suddenly pull up the drawbridge, we will damage our own economic interests. So we are pro-migration from a principled perspective, but also from a very practical perspective. And, you know, we make that case very strongly. I wish more politicians in the UK, across Europe and across the world would make that case much more powerfully and strongly than they do. I am absolutely passionate in my belief that Scotland is a place where people should feel safe and secure and welcome, regardless of where they come from. If you choose to live in Scotland, then as far as I'm concerned, you're Scottish. Whether you were born here and 3 generations of your family were born here, or whether you've only lived here for a few months, if this is your home, it should feel like your home and you should feel welcome. I've said many times before, and I will say many, many times in the future, that diversity for any country and diversity for Scotland is not a weakness. It is, in my view, one of our greatest and most precious strengths. Everybody who chooses or who finds themselves building a home in a country should feel safe and welcome and secure in that country, part of the very fabric of the country. And our Muslim community here in Scotland is part of the fabric of our society. We would be a weaker country without that contribution. I don't care where you come from. If you live in Scotland, where you come from is irrelevant. The contribution you make to Scotland is all that matters. The fact that you see Scotland as your home is all that matters. So, that is a world away. Now, are there people who support independence, who would be more akin to the nationalism of other countries that I've described? Of course there will be, because there will always be individuals around a movement that I wouldn't necessarily find myself aligned to. But the broad-based independence movement in Scotland is progressive and outward-looking and inclusive, and is not ethnically based at all. This is where Scottish nationalism, if I can use that term, which is often a pejorative term with negative connotations, it's where Scottish nationalism offers a positive role model for the rest of the world. Because my definition of what it means to be Scottish, I mean, the nation, the territorial limits of the nation are well defined, but what it means to be Scottish, in my view, is whether or not you choose to live there. So if you choose to live in Scotland, if you choose to make Scotland your home, it doesn't matter to me whether you come from England, the United States, Pakistan, India, Poland, or any other part of the world. If Scotland is your home, if you live there, if you work there, if you make a contribution, you are Scottish and have as much right as I do. And as part of that, I think in Scotland, most of us are essentially very comfortable with the idea of overlapping identities. We know that you can be Scottish and British, Scottish and European, Scottish and Polish, Scottish and Pakistani. The idea of overlapping identities. We know that you can be Scottish and British, Scottish and European, Scottish and Polish, Scottish and Pakistani. The fact of the matter is, women are no less able, no less intelligent, no less capable of getting on in politics than men are. So the fact that we don't always have, broadly speaking, gender balance says that there are systemic institutional barriers to women progressing. Systemic institutional barriers to women progressing. And I think that's why it's important to take concrete steps to overcome those barriers, so that hopefully in the future these things are just what we take for granted and not the exception.